Hey Stampers, Kim from stampingandperfection.com. Welcome to my craft room. I have two cards I want to share with you today, and these go along with the Technique a Week video I shared earlier this week. I'm using the rainbow coloring trend, and you can see I've created two different backgrounds. One is super simple, and the other one is a little bit more work, but definitely worth it. I'm also using that sketch outline on the top card in just the black and the clear. And I'm using some vellum today for fun, just to add a little interest to the card. The first card I'm going to be playing with my favorite things stuff, and I love their 6x6 paper pads. That one I'm holding up is called Rainbow Stripes. And I have a 6x6 Totally Tiffany fab file that I use to store these in. I love Totally Tiffany's fab file. You can see I have it labeled MFT because my favorite things is mftstamps.com. And I have quite a variety of their papers. Totally Tiffany has these clear envelopes that you can store them in, and you can actually label them. I don't label them because I keep that front piece. My favorite things changes out the paper packs they have available, but they always have bright colors. They're always really fun. I don't think the Rainbow Stripes is available, but they definitely have a rainbow pattern paper set that is current, and it has something very much like this piece I'm holding. Now I've cut that is a patterned piece of paper. So simple for a background. I have a card base cut at 4.5 by 11, scored at 5.5, scored and folded at 5.5. That piece of pattern paper is cut at 4 by 5.25, so I have a little bit of white border around it. And I'm just attaching that to the card base with some of that Tombow Mono liquid adhesive. I love this. It gives me a little bit of wiggle room so I can, make sure I sort of have it straight on there and I have kind of an even amount of that white around the edge. And then I can just push it down and it holds nicely. The vellum that I'm using is cut the same size as that pattern paper. Again, that's 4 by 5.25, and I'm going to attach that with some glue dots. I usually use glue dots. I find it easiest. I'm just going to put, for now, 2 or 3 down where I know the image that I colored earlier is going to go. So I will add more later. On the other card, I actually put the glue dots down in each corner because I really want that to hold down, and I'll add more to this card also. So earlier today, I actually colored in this image, which is from the Showering You with Love stamp and die set from My Favorite Things Stamps. And I used my Altenew alcohol markers to color in those two images, and then I used the coordinating dies from the Showering You with Love stamp set to cut those out. So, and I'm not going to make you watch the painful process of me coloring with my alcohol markers. I like the Altenew ones. They have a maybe 4 or 5 different sets of them, and I love the markers. They are easy just to grab, and like they come with 3 yellows in a set, so I don't have to think about what colors go together all that much. So I like the artist markers there. So I'm just using some foam tape that I also got from My Favorite Things and just adding it to the back of both of those. And before I stick that on, I do want to add a sentiment, and I do want to add that sentiment onto the vellum. Now, one thing I could do, or could have done before I attached that vellum to the bottom, is I could have created like a little puddle below where my girl and the duck are going to be. And if you want to do something like that, you can use your alcohol marker, and you're going to color on the back side of the vellum. Okay, so you always color those on that on the back side of the vellum. So that's the stamp set that I got. I love little stamp sets with a fabulous image. It has one nice sentiment, and the sentiment is Showering You with Love. I think it goes along beautifully with that rainbow background. I just really like that diagonal stripe rainbow color background. And I'm going to add that sentiment, and that stamp set has a couple little ducks, and it's also got a little set of raindrops. I'm going to put those on, and I'm going to heat emboss those. So I haven't attached the images that I colored in yet. So first I'm going to move those out of the way, and then I'm going to, pardon my arm here, then I'm going to actually emboss those in black. So super cute. Like I'm not by any means an expert colorist, but there's something so much fun about coloring in an image with alcohol markers or watercoloring an image. And I haven't really embraced colored pencils too much yet. That's on my list for the future. So I imagine it's the same way, but I find it really easy when I'm, watercoloring and stuff like that, or using my alcohol markers, to really lose myself in that. And it's nice because it kind of takes you away from everything that's going on around you. I like quiet, so I really keep things quiet while I color, and I just get lost in what I'm doing and focus on the task. And I like it because I feel like it helps me live in that moment. So I've used my Versamark ink to stamp the images, and now I'm pulling out my black embossing powder. And this is from Wow, this black embossing powder. I like the Wow embossing powders. I like the Altenew embossing powders. I like the Stampin' Up embossing powders. I still use some of the Stampin' Up embossing powders. And I always just do it over the coffee filter because it's easier. So I just went ahead and heat set that embossing powder, and then I can go ahead and attach the little focal images that I colored, and I'm going to add some more. At this point I'm going to add some more glue dots. I'm using my We Are Memory Keepers Quickstik. I really like this little tool. It's hard to find now. There are lots of other tools I know people have. I'm particularly attached to this. I love that little end. That actually pulls out, and it has like a spatula or thin edge, and it's quite a nice little tool. It's pretty handy and it's pretty inexpensive. So, and the clay on the other end to add embellishments lasts a really long time. So I'm adding a few more glue dots, and I put a couple under the sentiment and under the raindrops because that kind of camouflages it. And now I'm going to attach my my little girl and her umbrella and the little duck, and I'll add a couple of raindrop embellishments. My favorite embellishments are the clear drops, or the iridescent drops, or bubbles sometimes they're called, from Studio Katia and from Neat and Tangled. A lot of times I get them through Sunny Studios, but I just love that touch that they add. So I'm going to add a few of those here, and that is actually going to complete my card. So I will just add them, and I always add them in odd numbers. So I'm just, kind of playing with where I'm going to put them. And then I will use my multimedia mat and that We Are Memory Keepers tool to actually attach them. So while I finish this up, let me tell you about some tips at shopping at mftstamps.com. If you shop on Wednesday is Blitz Day, and they have some really good deals on Wednesdays. They also, no matter what day you shop, with qualifying orders, will send you a free gift. And usually it's around $60, but sometimes that changes. Sometimes it's less. And you get a stamp set or a die, whatever. It's a random thing. They also have free shipping with a qualifying order. That's a different amount. And then when you spend $100, they have a 10% off, and $200, they have a 20% off. They have lots of ways for you to save. Plus you can get a freebie. So I love shopping at MFT Stamps. And I always wait till I have plenty of stuff on my wish list to get those deals. Now, a stamp company that I also wanted to share with you, this is the first time I've ever ordered from Trinity Stamps, and I don't even remember where I saw it. I don't know whether I saw it on Instagram or Facebook or something, but I decided to check them out. So I placed an order, and I really wanted that big Love You Bunches and this Hello Sentiments stamp set. But then I found another little stamp set that I really thought thought was cute with a coordinating die. And while I was browsing the website, I found those Doris adhesive foams that were super thin that I thought would be great. But they sent me those gold sequins and that tea bag and a very nice thank you note as a freebie. So I got a whole package of gold heart embellishments for free, along with the tea bag, which I will enjoy later this evening. So I'm taking out that stamp, and you know I save those cellophane wrappers because I like to reuse them for techniques, but I really want to use this Love You Bunches image. I bought this because as soon as I saw it, I had so many ideas for watercoloring, practicing with my alcohol markers, and doing the technique where I just heat emboss it in black or stamp it in black and just leave it as an outline stamp. That's one of the current trends that you're seeing now. And since I created that really colorful background, that's what I'm going to do here. So I'm going to do this part first. And at first I think that I'm going to use just my Catherine Pooler Midnight black ink, the pigment ink, and I go ahead and stamp this, and I get a beautiful image, but on that vellum, and that vellum is cut, by the way, at 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. It's the same size as my card front. And when I pull this down, I realize this is too flat. I am going to go ahead and emboss this. So since I left my stamp in place and I could tuck my vellum right back into that corner, I pulled out my Versamark ink. Actually, it was still right in front of me from the last project I was working on. So I pulled out the Versamark and I stamped it in Versamark, and that pigment ink, that black ink, stays wet for a while. I probably could have just put my embossing powder on top, but I went ahead and added my Versamark just to make sure, because this is a big image and there are lots of lines in there and little details. So now I'm pulling out my embossing powder, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm putting a lot of embossing powder on here. It's a good thing I've got those coffee filters underneath. That was a generous amount. I probably could have done a third of that and just lifted the paper and covered the rest of the image. But I'm going to go ahead and heat set that, and I'm going to put that aside. I'm done with that part now. So for the bottom part, I'm going to make my own rainbow background, and I'm using my stamp positioner, which I probably don't really need that stamp positioner. What I really want is that grid paper, and I'm pulling off the hello sentiment. I love, love, love this giant script hello. This background technique works great for big sentiments. Like I have a big thinking of you from Hero Arts. I'm thinking, wow, that would be a great background with this technique, and maybe I'll do that one diagonally. And you know, Catherine Pooler has all kinds of big ones. So does Alternate. Like I have Concord and Ninth. Like there's just, you have enough sentiments to do this. So I'm using that that L-shaped ruler that I have that goes along with my stamp positioner, but I really want that grid paper, and that grid paper is laminated, and I do use that for a ton of things, but I probably could have just put that grid paper right on my craft mat and done this without the stamp positioner, but I'm sort of lining up that L-shaped ruler with the side of it at first. Now, I'm moving this down 4 squares. I just want to move it the same amount of squares, and I looking at it realized that hello sentiment is about 4 squares. So I'm going to move it down 4 squares. That red, by the way, these are all Catherine Pooler inks here. That was her Rockin' Red, which is one of her original 4 colors. So now I pulled out the orange twist, and I like to stagger the sentiments. I don't like all the hellos lined up all the way down. I probably couldn't get them straight enough and it would bother me. So I'm sort of staggering them. I ended the Rockin' Red with the HE. I started the orange twist with the LLO. So I'm going to go, I'm just going to stagger them that way. And you know what? They don't have to be perfect, because the vellum is going to go over it, and the vellum is going to soften it a little bit. Nobody's going to see if something isn't stamped perfectly or perfectly aligned, because I'm going to have that giant embossed image over the top. So I'm pulling out, the yellow I'm using here is shea butter, moving my ruler down 4 squares. And I'm going to move the paper up a little bit because that, else I don't know why I didn't just flip over the ruler, but I'm moving it down 4. And just make sure if you move your paper, make sure it's straight on the grid paper. And then I'm starting with O this time. And I didn't quite get that. A nice thing about big images is they're easy to align. These clear stamps are fantastic for that. And as are the Catherine Puller inks, I might add. And if I didn't get it perfectly aligned, oh well, close enough. The Vellum's going to go over it. And I'm going to add a little bit of the side of the H because it feels like a lot of space there. I'm just sliding it over. This is where it would have been easier to do if I just pulled that grid paper out and put it on my mat. And the grid paper I'm using just to use that ruler to line it up. So you could use any ruler here. It doesn't have to be, anything special. My T-square ruler got broken in the move, so I don't have one of those. And I have to get one, but they're sold out in a lot of places. So I'll be patient. And again, I have to restamp that because I didn't even push down hard enough on the E. And that green, by the way, is Grass Skirt. So now I'm going to pull out one of my favorite blues. It's called Blue Suede. Moving the ruler down 4 squares. Each of those squares is 1/4 of an inch. Not that it matters, but because I'm doing that based on how big my stamp is. Again, I'm being careful to stagger this. And I'm filling it in with the blue. Aren't these colors fabulous? They're so bright and vibrant. And they really do stamp beautifully. The only times they haven't, I'm basically getting my clear block is hitting the side of the stamp positioner. So that's my own fault for using the stamp positioner. So I move the ruler out of the way because now I can eyeball this. And the purple I'm using here is Grape Crush. And you'll notice there's a teensy bit of white at the bottom, so I want to fill that in because I want this whole background filled in. So I'm going to go ahead and pull out the rock and red I used for the top, and this will just stamp part of the word. But the fun thing about that is it looks like I had a whole background paper, a whole piece of pattern paper, and just cut it there, and I love that. So this is a way to create your own background papers, and you can do this. It doesn't have to be a sentiment. It could be border stamps, it could be florals. Like, create your own background papers. It can save you a lot of money and space if you don't collect all those background papers. I missed a spot here, so I'm just hitting that with my heat tool. And that's the Wow Heat Embossing tool. I quite like that. It's got 2 settings, so I like it a lot. So I've put 4 glue dots down, 1 in each corner, and then I'm going to strategically place, I can say that, a few glue dots under like the flower centers and dense part of the leaves, because this one is going to my mother, and she's stuck in the house. She's 77, so she's not allowed to go anywhere. So I'm attaching this and don't quite get it in place. This is a nice thing about glue dots. I can really carefully peel them away. And yes, those glue dots are going to show in those 4 corners, but since I'm mailing it quite a distance, I really want to make sure, it's stuck down on the edges so I don't bend it, because that would make me feel bad. So, I'm just placing it back down. This is the beauty of glue dots. You can pull it up and then place it back down. So I'm giving it a good push. Now I created a sentiment that says, I've been thinking about you, from that same stamp set, and that is just stamped in that Catherine Puller Midnight Black. That was just done on a piece of white scrap paper, and then I just cut it down to size to fit, and I put it across that particular location because I didn't feel like I had done a good job on the center of that, because I missed it when I was first heat embossing it, and it was a little smudged, so I covered it up with the sentiment. I'm pulling out the multimedia mat, which is a good glue to actually glue down vellum because it does end up matte color, but I'm using some of those freebie gold hearts that Trinity Stamps sent me. Thank you very much for that. And these are the 2 cards, so that will complete this video. Thank you so much. Please give this video a like and share with your friends, and subscribe to my channel. Click the bell so you get notifications every time I post a new video, and make sure you keep your eye out for my new Technique a Week Beyond the Basics series for some techniques and fun trends in stamping. So I hope you enjoyed this. Thank you so much for watching.